All right, welcome to NFL Outdated Cover 2 series, and we are focusing on the New England Patriots. I am joined here by Jason Joseph. You can catch him at Jason Joseph 810 on Twitter. How's it going?
Wow, what a night that was. Honestly, just watching Sunday night football, it was really a cool experience. And, it was a tough loss for the Patriots, but, seeing Tom Brady just do like what he did, it was wild.
Well, yeah, and talk a little bit about that. Obviously, we talked a little bit earlier. You've been a Patriots fan. I'm guessing from Tom Brady. And what was that like? Kind of him, having cheered him on for a while and now facing your team.
It was very weird because some of the times, like even during some of the Super Bowl games, I every single game was close. So like you could never really feel like you were ever going to win every single game because of how close the games were. But now it's like when you're facing him after he's won a lot of Super Bowls with your team, there's this fear that's sort of just biting at you, if that makes any sort of sense. And I thought that overall, and I know that we'll probably talk more about this in a little bit, but I think that Mac Jones did a really nice job of just living up to that sort of pressure, especially being at home in front of the fans and everything. When Tom Brady, one of the best quarterbacks of all time, is coming back to his own town, you definitely have to live up to those expectations. And I thought it was just a great game overall. I thought that it was just something that was very fun to watch, and it came down to the wire.
Yeah, it's interesting you bring up, kind of that, fear of, the late game heroics. And I grew up Chicago Bulls fan, and kind of looking back, well, now it's like, okay, obviously Jordan's a GOAT, of basketball. He won all those championships. But I remember watching those series with Utah and it being so close and you just not knowing which way it was going to go. But like,
Right.
kind of like in hindsight, now it's like, of course the Bulls were going to win because they had Jordan. And uh, Tom Brady obviously has that as well, and it's just something about obviously being in those situations, and obviously he is intelligent, and obviously fantastic, quarterback, the best of all time. So that was kind of just an interesting game for him to kind of come back, obviously where he you know did all these great things and then obviously get a chance to face that his longtime coach. Um, Talk a little bit about obviously it was interesting with Mac Jones being selected, and last year was kind of an odd year with Cam Newton, and obviously Mac Jones he really did have a solid game and really come out on the positive here.
Yeah, he did. I really liked what I saw out of him today. Only one interception, and it really wasn't his fault. I mean, the ball just tipped off of one of the receiver's hands, and it was intercepted by the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. But overall, he was 31 for 40 on the day with a passing and the amount of attempts he had. He threw for 275 yards. I actually thought that overall, like when I saw his QBR at the end, it was better than Tom Brady's, and that kind of shocked me a little bit because I mean I knew that his QBR was high and that he had a really great game, but just looking at the comparisons between him and Tom Brady, I thought Tom Brady had a higher QBR than what he portrayed, but he had a 70.8 QBR rating, and Matt Jones had a 101.6, but Mac was only sacked 4 times today, and I thought that the offensive line did a really nice job of protecting him. And I thought that his decision making overall was very good overall, and how he was able to convert a lot of the times on third down, coming up with really big plays, putting the ball to Jakobi Meyers, especially in that one play where they threw it to a N'Keal Harry and they ran different sort of pass options, run pass options. I really thought that the play calling was great, and Mac Jones really looked like the leader of this franchise, and that leaves me very confident moving forward with the New England Patriots.
Is that kind of a different feeling from like draft day? I know it was, obviously there was, the draft, especially I don't know if you remember that interesting, like how he walked. They turned it
Yep.
into a meme, how he walked
Yep.
onto the stage, and it's a different feeling kind of now as you've seen him play as opposed to back then.
Yeah, it has. And honestly, last week was a little bit of a concern for me because I felt as if he just, even though the New Orleans Saints defense is great, like don't get me wrong, but I felt like something was missing out of him. Like his timing looked a little bit off. It looked like some of the passes that he was making didn't look like they were the best decisions and the best plays. But today, or tonight, excuse me, he just looked very calm and cool and collective. And I felt like even when he was in the pocket, he didn't hesitate or anything like that. He did also a really nice job of running the football as well. He showed off his athleticism and his speed, and that's what really helped him stay in this game, really.
It's interesting that you talk about athleticism because that was kind of the knock on him, that he didn't look all that athletic, and
Right.
but what it does take, obviously Tom Brady didn't as well, coming out of the draft, and he still is kind of knock on him that he hasn't been all that athletic, but really what it takes is that poise, and if Mac Jones can do this on a big stage, I mean that can go a long way to his development. And obviously you're going to have those rookie quarterbacks are going to have those bad games, but
Right.
what they do on the big stage, I think, is huge as well. So, so you're kind of happy where you see his development so far.
Yeah, absolutely. And the one thing that really stood out to me tonight was how much he got Brandon Bolden involved. Brandon Bolden had 6 receptions tonight for 51 yards. And I really thought that just overall, Kendrick Bourne played really well too. It wasn't like he was just going to one option. Yes, Jakobi Meyers was the person who had the most targets, but that's because he is arguably the best receiver on this team. But everybody was getting involved with the play calls and everybody got touches. And that is what leadership is all about. And the fact that he was able to do that in this game, specifically against Tom Brady and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, Todd Bowles' defense is pretty good. So, being able to do it in that sort of a situation when the stakes were very high, it definitely says a lot for sure.
And it's interesting, what makes a good football team doesn't always make good fantasy players. And though,
That's true.
the
It's
joke has
true.
always been, I just tend to stay away from Patriots players, but, obviously otherwise wide receivers, they can really help Mac Jones development. And is Jakobi Meyers really becoming that number one wide receiver that, that he'll need kind of going forward? Is he kind of, really separating himself from the group?
Yeah, I would say so. I'd say that Julian Edelman obviously was a big loss, and he was somebody that obviously Tom Brady and even Cam Newton went to a lot. He was somebody that was really good in the slot and also just made some really great catches whenever they needed. And I don't think that Jakobi Meyers is necessarily going to be like Julian Edelman, but I do feel like he's a threat. And he's probably their biggest threat that they have offensively right now. And the one thing that I really like is his route running. Compared to the other wide receivers, I think that he's able to do that very successfully. And he's able to make cornerbacks and safeties feel more off balance because he can just do so much with his feet.
Is that kind of been the knock on N'Keal Harry, that he wasn't really able to get open?
Yeah. I would say that was the biggest knock. I really didn't know what to expect out of N'Keal Harry today. I heard that he was doing so great in practice, and he hasn't been uh, obviously he hasn't been back in a very long time. And the fact that he was going to start tonight made me curious as to what that was going to look like on the field. It's one thing to do really well at practice, and then just come into a game and just have that same sort of a performance. That's a lot more difficult. But I thought that overall, he had some nice plays, and it was really good to see him play some of the snaps. And it's good to have him back and just run into that sort of an offense, with Bill Belichick and the whole coaching staff. But but there still is a lot left in the season, and I'm hoping that he can continue to try to be that wide receiver that a lot of Patriots fans expected him to be. He hasn't really lived up to that expectation as of right now, but anything can change.
And he wanted to be traded. I mean, is that
He
kind of
did.
still out there, or is he kind of pulled that back at all in the media? Or
Honestly, I think that he's pulled it back right now because the biggest thing for him is just to stay healthy. He wants to
absolutely.
get out there and he wants to play. And that obviously is the most important thing because, if he's not out there, what's his value? And not only that, from a business side, the other thing is that he loves to play. So you want to see him back out there. He wants to feel really good about himself. So he wants to get all the reps that he can. And I think that that's obviously the biggest priority for him.
And you talk about like staying healthy. What is like Nelson Aguilar's role in the offense? Because obviously, he didn't quite live up to expectations in Philly either.
No, he
Obviously,
didn't.
yeah,
Yeah, no, a lot of you see a lot of Philly fans, they actually come up to me when I talk about the Patriots to them and they ask me how I feel about Nelson Aguilar. Really, it's confusing as to how what his role really is with this offense. Is he a
Mhm.
slot sort of a wide receiver or like what's his role? And I still feel like they're trying to figure that out. They're trying to get him involved as much as possible, but it's tough because if you look at like where this team is, this team is not in that contention sort of a spot. There are certain spots where they really show their youth, especially with the offensive line and with the quarterback. And it's important to note those things, even though at the same time they went out during free agency and they spent all this money on all these guys. But yeah, I think that just trying to figure out where Nelson Aguilar fits with this offense and um, what they have to do moving forward, that's going to be something that is going to be a big key to figure out with them to figure out offensively, especially now that they're very limited with the running game. Losing James White, that was a really big loss. And, they traded away Sony Michel. And now their main running backs really are Damien Harris and J.J. Taylor, really. So, that was a big part of their game. And losing James White, it definitely changes things a little bit. And you even saw tonight that they didn't even run the ball as much.
Yeah, and actually, I was watching a little bit of Bill Belichick's thrilling press conference at the end, as he always does. Uh, they asked about running the ball, and he said, "Yeah, we basically we couldn't get it going." And okay, there
Yeah.
you go. Yeah, JJ Taylor, obviously he's there. I've heard a lot about uh, Rhamondre Stevenson, the name, but I don't know. Are they kind of working him in, or what is his role like now, and then maybe kind of going forward? Is he kind of going to be able to fill that James White role, or
I honestly don't really know. I mean, obviously, he wasn't really out there tonight, but I do feel like in the future, maybe trying to put him into that sort of a role might really benefit them. I really like, um, I really like the little things that he does, like the sort of intangible things. I think that when it comes to, I remember last week there was a 3rd-and-1 play, and they gave the ball to him, and he ran it a little bit over to the left side of the line of scrimmage, and he got past um, he got past the line for a first down, and that was something that I really liked. He is able to just do the little things right, and I think that that's something that Bill Belichick really does like about him. But I'm curious as to moving forward how they're going to use him in the offense too, and when they're going to go to him. Is he really a third down back? I really don't know. But
right?
that is something that remains to be seen because that's what they need, and that's what James White was really good at.
Right, right. Like I said, with any of the Patriots players, one of my cardinal rules with fantasy football is do not go with any Patriots running back. So you just don't know. And
Yes.
obviously, this year you've got Damien Harris, who's kind of been the feature back or supposedly, but James White, has always kind of had a role, and going back to the Super Bowl, he really has a role in Is Damien Harris then kind of going to be the bell cow? I mean, does Bill Belichick kind of go ahead and do that, or is he really kind of still like Brandon Bolden, what he does?
I believe that Damien Harris has to be the guy. I mean, this is a guy that was on the practice squad like just a couple of seasons ago, and he's just worked his way up, and he's done really a tremendous job overall, just doing a nice job of reading where the ball is and what type of play he should make, and reading the defensive line too. I really feel like his decision making as well is something that is just very powerful with the Patriots system, and it fits very well into what the Patriots are trying to do and what they're really good at. But I think that going forward, Damien, even though he struggled a little bit tonight and he went up against a pretty good defensive line, with Shaq Barrett and all those guys for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, I think that going forward, he still has to grow a little bit more. He's still young, and I think that he's very fast, and that he'll quickly learn, and he'll evolve into that number one running back for this team.
Right. And, Belichick does seem to, and I guess I didn't realize he was on the practice squad. Belichick really does seem to kind of have a good knack for kind of developing some of those players. For so long, he really tried to do that with the wide receivers, maybe to the detriment. And maybe that's part of the reason, Tom Brady left as well. Just not necessarily getting the top draft pick that's a wide receiver, or maybe even a running back, but trying to develop those players kind of from within.
I think he also tried to do it a little bit with the tight ends too, because I remember a couple of seasons ago he drafted 3 tight ends, and none of them are even on the team right now, which is, actually one of them is, but like he's still getting a little bit of he's not really on the field as much, but it's like the same sort of a thing. And that's one of the main reasons why they invested in all of these guys during free agency. And it does make them better, but at the same time, obviously they're in a very tough division now with the Buffalo Bills and how they've been playing. And, the Miami Dolphins, even though Tua is going to be missing some time, they still have a lot of young guys, and Jalen Waddle and Mike Gesicki and a lot of other guys that are just young, and they're just very good at their position. So the Patriots overall, they're in a very tough spot.
Yeah, it was such an interesting thing for them in the free agency to sign both Hunter Henry and Jonnu Smith, and they both had. I know Jonnu Smith had a touchdown tonight, right?
He did, and yeah, I was going to say Jonnu Smith definitely made up for his last week's performance, because it was really bad. I mean, how many drop footballs? At least 3 drop footballs, at least what I saw. And also that interception, well, it wasn't really an interception, but the one that tipped right off of his hands and went into the hands of Malcolm Jenkins for a pick 6. I mean, it was really bad. And then there was also one time where he got a penalty when it was 3rd and 1, and that was during the most crucial time of the game when they were about to score. And that penalty was really a rally killer for the Patriots. So he didn't have a good game at all last week. And the fact that he was able to do a better job blocking and also caught the touchdown, he played a really big role offensively tonight. And I thought that he had a bounce back performance.
And Henry did all right tonight as well?
Yeah, Hunter Henry had a pretty good game. He had 4 receptions for 32 yards, but he also did a really great job blocking as well. So he only had 5 targets. But I thought that overall he played very well too. I really liked how Matt Jones was able to put him into the offense, and he made some really nice catches.
And he's really had a trouble staying on the field. He, was hurt with the Chargers, so, because of that, I mean, is Mac Jones kind of trust Jonnu Smith a little bit more? Or is it just kind of, either or?
I would say that it's a little bit of either or, but at the same time, health is something that really does pay a toll when it comes to players that just can't stay healthy. So, of course, it would make sense to rely more on Jonnu Smith because he's there more. And he's not the type of person that's going to get a lot of receptions or a lot of targets, but he's really mainly known for his blocking and what he's able to do without the ball in his hands. But I still do feel like Jonnu Smith and Hunter Henry, whoever's out there, of course, Mac Jones is going to get them involved as much as possible because that's something that's like a part of, I would say, a part of their strong suit when they're able to get the tight ends involved. I think that that's what actually shapes their identity offensively.
Right. And obviously that can definitely help the running game, everything.
It
Yes.
opens up so much more
Yep.
stuff for them.
Absolutely. And obviously, with Gronk being gone,
I was
I
surprised
think,
he didn't play.
yeah, I think that
Yeah,
was, a little bit of a letdown, obviously he's got 4 cracked ribs,
yeah,
that would have been obviously helped, Tom Brady out and obviously would have added, to the intrigue but as far as with the Patriots, they don't really have that, um, you know, flashy tight end that's really going to, get the yards like he used to.
yeah. Well, Cameron Brates, obviously, he had a great game. I don't think that you would consider him to be a flashy sort of a tight end, and neither OJ Howard. But I mean, the amount of depth that they have at the tight end position, it's a juggernaut of a team. Just with everybody that they have at the tight end position. So Tom Brady has a ton of weapons, and even if Antonio Brown didn't play, he was another game time decision. But you still have Chris Godwin and you still have Mike Evans, and it's just unbelievable. But no, going back to the whole tight end position, yeah, I don't really think that both of those guys in greats and and why am I blanking on his name right now? OJ Howard.
Yeah.
I don't think that both of them are flashy sort of tight ends. They're not going to make the flashiest catches or anything, but they make a big impact on the game.
It's interesting kind of thinking back to Gronk on the Patriots with Belichick. And obviously, I don't think he was the typical Belichick guy, right? But he kind of
No,
almost like he toterated him because of his talent, and
right,
obviously because of what Brady thought of him,
right.
so that, I talk a little bit, obviously, Belichick, a lot's been said about whether it was Tom Brady or Belichick. But obviously both of these, guys are the top of their game, best ever to do it. What about Belichick and kind of his assistants, with getting the game plan ready? And because obviously they had a solid game plan tonight versus Tom Brady.
Yeah, I thought that his game plan, especially defensively, was. I don't think that anybody could have done it any better. I think that the main game plan was to sit Tom Brady or have him be on the sidelines as much as possible. And they did a pretty good job at that overall. I think offensively, they were able to really make some great plays and they really used the clock to their advantage for the most part. And whatever it was defensively, yeah, okay, you could see in the fourth quarter that Tom Brady was converting a lot on the third downs. And there's only so much you can do on Tom Brady, especially when he has all the weapons that he has and the offensive line that he has. But I thought that overall, Tom Brady looked very slow to begin with. And the Patriots did jump out on top, and it really felt like they were dominating the game because they weren't letting Tom Brady go off, like, throwing 400 yards like he was able to do a couple of games ago.
Mhm.
But overall, Tom Brady really did show his greatness at the end. And, the Patriots, they just came a 54-yard field goal short. And it was, I actually thought that was going to go in by Folk, but it ended up just hitting the left side of the crossbar. But yeah, I mean, they did everything that they possibly could. They threw everything at Tom Brady, and I thought that overall, yeah, maybe there were a couple of plays where they got some, little penalties, and maybe they could have brushed up on those sort of things. But it wasn't like last week where you had another person on the field, an extra person over there, and not as many miscues in this game. And that's a positive that I really take out of it.
Absolutely. Well, so talked about obviously Tom Brady, some of the difficulties, and obviously Matt Judon was a huge part of that. And what are some of the other players? Because the Patriots defense has really been solid the last few years. Even this year they've had some great games. And talk about a little bit about Matt Judon and some of the other players on the Patriots defense to really focus on.
Yeah, I mean Christian Barmore, I thought looked really good today. Also, Kyle Van Noy, he made some really nice plays. I thought on the defensive line, and the biggest thing that really stood out to me was how the cornerbacks and the safeties played. I mean, Kyle Duggar really had a great game himself, and I liked J.C. Jackson's. There was that one play where I thought that maybe he shouldn't have gotten that penalty call because it was a third down, and J.C. Jackson did a really nice job of guarding Mike Evans on the play, I believe it was, and they said it was pass interference, but it was just such a slight play. But I thought J.C. Jackson's presence overall defensively made it really tough for Chris Godwin and Mike Evans, and it makes you think like if Stephon Gilmore was healthy, how would that have been different? Like would that have made an even more impact, if that makes any sort of sense.
Well, yeah, I was just going to ask that. Obviously, with him out, and has he played his last game for the Patriots, or are they expecting him back next year?
I I hope he comes back. I really do. I mean, Stephon Gilmore is one of my favorite players. I remember when the Buffalo Bills had him and when we signed him, and a lot of people on the Bills were like, "Oh my gosh, like you guys took Stephon Gilmore. Oh, he's a nobody, you know." And what do you know? Now he's like one of the top paid cornerbacks in the NFL, and look at what he's been able to do. He is just unbelievable. He kind of reminds me a little bit of Kawhi Leonard because he's quiet and he has that sort of like robotic, sort of like a personality,
Okay.
which
Yeah.
is like a good thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like he doesn't really show a lot of expression. He studies film. He's able to understand the game in a lot of ways in which other people have a harder time of understanding the game. He's able to he's a very smart person and he's very bright. And I think that if the Patriots just let him go and if he doesn't come back, that's a big loss for them.
It's interesting. He almost, seems to kind of model Belichick.
Yeah. Yeah. No, absolutely. I think that that's actually a pretty good comparison. And that's why he really does fit into the system because he has that same sort of mindset and he's able to make it tougher for wide receivers and even tight ends to get open. And that's something that plays a huge part in the defensive scheme of Bill Belichick. And even during the Super Bowl, when they went up against the Rams, Stephon Gilmore was one of the main reasons why they were able to keep it a close game, for the Patriots because he did such a great job defensively and he made it really tough for the Rams to score.
Now, with Belichick, obviously all the success he's had with Tom Brady, if he lets him go, I mean, what about? As an outsider, as someone who doesn't, I'm not a Patriots fan, but I definitely respect Belichick and everything. But if he kind of lets him go, will that kind of almost be a detriment? Like he's kind of trying to say that his system is better than the players, or does Belichick tend to do that at times? Kind of let some of these veterans go.
As far as letting Stephon go,
Yeah,
that's what you're
Stefan,
saying.
or yeah, and some of the others too. You kind of think of, kind of how he just kind of let them go before, before they really done playing.
Yeah, I would say that there's definitely that sort of a mindset, but at the same time, Belichick is also really good at developing defensive players. So, he knows who he's drafting when it comes to defense, and that's why Christian Barmore I think is a really great fit with the defensive line because he kind of reminds me a little bit of Donta Hightower when he first came into the NFL with with the Patriots. So he kind of reminds me of that sort of a player where he's just really good at just sacking players and trying to battle in the trenches defensively. He's somebody that can show a lot of movement, and also he's just very tall, and he is he is all muscle. Like it is unbelievable how big he really is, and there's like not 1 inch of fat on that. So I mean, it's unbelievable how strong he truly is.
So yeah, I mean, you talked about obviously the drafting, how Belichick is kind of drafted and developed. What do you see are some needs of the Patriots kind of going into the 2022 draft?
I would say that the biggest needs right now, obviously, they could always use somebody else at wide receiver.
Yep.
I also think that getting somebody else on the offensive line could be something that's really huge for them, because they could always use more protection for Mac Jones. That's just something that is just a guarantee. But I also feel like it also would make sense if they even went for somebody who's really good, obviously in the backfield. If Stephon Gilmore decides that he's not going to stay, they are going to need somebody else at cornerback that can sort of fill into his shoes. I mean, Adrian Phillips is great, and they have a lot of other guys too, like Jackson and all that, but they're going to need somebody else in that backfield, I think, eventually. And that's just something that just fits their identity. They're all about defense. They're all about making it very tough for opponents to score. So they need somebody that's going to fit into their culture and fit into their locker room.
Absolutely. And obviously it depends on where they draft,
Right.
I'm not sure, kind of what do you expect for, the win total? Cause obviously they're sitting at 1-3 after 4 weeks now.
I went through their schedule, during the beginning of the season, and I was penciling in wins and penciling in losses, and some of them I just didn't really know. Some of them are going to be a coin toss. I honestly didn't know what to pencil this game specifically, just coming into the season. I really didn't. Yeah, no, I definitely didn't. I see them being an 8-win team. If they can have 8 wins this season, I think that's a really good year for the Patriots. I think that they're in the middle of the pack. I would say that at least 8 wins is probably the most reasonable amount. What would I like to see? I would like to see 10 or 11 if I'm, trying to be more realistic into what I'd like to see. Obviously, anybody would love to see a 17-0 team. I mean, that's just a gimme. But I think that I would really like to see them have 11 wins. But I know that that's going to be really tough, especially because of the division that they're in with the Bills and with the Miami Dolphins. I mean, the AFC is just their division's not getting any easier. Josh Allen and all those guys.
Yeah, so they play the Bills twice still. They play the Cowboys. That'll be another tough one.
That's going to be a fun one, though.
Yeah, it's interesting what Belichick did, and obviously the rain and everything played a factor, but he really did slow down one of the top offenses. So that's plausible that they could really do something against Dak and the Cowboys.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think that when it comes to just the amount of weapons that the Dallas Cowboys have, I mean, offensively they are a juggernaut, but at the same time, the Patriots have a lot of guys that can really do a lot of damage. So I think it's going to be a great matchup. Anyway, you pretty much look at it. That game is also in Foxborough, so I think that that's something that's going to help them. Obviously, they are playing later in that afternoon, which is going to be interesting. But I'm curious to see how the weather is going to impact that game. Going up against Dak Prescott. Dak Prescott's been really great. He's been tremendous this season for the Dallas Cowboys. And the running game for the Dallas Cowboys has really been a big factor in their offense this season too. So the Patriots are going to have to try to find a way to stop the run, and they're also going to have to do the same sort of thing that they did to Tom Brady tonight and just make sure that he stays on the sidelines for as much as possible. And I think that what's going to come down to is if they're able to kill the clock once they gain control of the game.
So yeah, would you say the Patriots are kind of better at pass defense, run defense, or what's really their strength?
I would say that offensively, I would say passing, but as far as defense goes, I would say pass defense is probably their better, their more stronger suit, if that makes any sort of sense. And The other thing I'm thinking about too is when they face the Dallas Cowboys. You know, Bill Belichick is a great coach, and he's going to have to be going up against Mike McCarthy, who, makes some questionable decisions when it comes to the end of the games and just how to control the clock. So I think that that's going to play a really big factor too, and that could maybe work out to the Patriots' success if they're able to come out on top. When they play against the Dallas Cowboys.
It's interesting with, obviously all the success that Bill Belichick has had, obviously, um, I think he gets kind of that implicit trust from people, obviously fans, from what he's done. Um, I just always wonder about his press conferences, like why he just doesn't give anything. Like I had to turn it down tonight because I'm like, I'm feeling depressed. I mean, obviously they
Yeah.
lost; it's a tough game, but he just doesn't give anybody anything. Obviously he's always been like that from what you've noticed, right?
Yeah, he has, and I saw the other picture. It was the other day. That was on Twitter, and somebody posted the thumbs up with Bill Belichick smiling after he won the Super Bowl against the Seattle Seahawks, and it made me crack up a little bit because it's not something that you see, and you just don't know what to expect out of him. Not even just during the press conferences, but when he's even out there on the field during the game. He doesn't really show a lot of emotions, and when he does, most of the time it's anger.
Yeah, and so it's interesting, the success that he's had with his assistants as well, but it just doesn't seem like that system translates anywhere else. Obviously he's really developed a great system, and with his assistants, they go somewhere else and they just they fall flat.
Yeah, yeah, it's honestly really interesting because it. I think that just adds more to how much Bill Belichick really does impact not just the Patriots but the NFL, and how just as a Hall of Fame candidate when it comes to coaching, he's just that good. He's able to make other people look better in his system, and I think that that's something that he doesn't really get a lot of credit for.
Well, yeah, especially with Tom Brady leaving, winning the Super Bowl, and having his success. Everyone kind of looks back and say, "Well, it was Tom Brady." Well,
Yeah.
obviously it's both, and I'm definitely not a Patriots fan, but you definitely have to appreciate we're just not going to see this again.
No.
With the parity in the NFL, with I think with all the talent evaluation, the way it's gone, you're not going to see that type of dynasty ever again, or at least not for a long time.
No, you're not. And I go back to the Super Bowl when the Patriots played against the Eagles, and I was never really a huge Tom Brady fan, but I always respected what he was able to do during the big moments and when the spotlight was really on him. And defensively, the Patriots were awful in that game in the Super Bowl, and I thought that was one of the worst defensive performances ever. And Bill Belichick, to me, just didn't look like he was prepared defensively going up against Nick Foles and that sort of an offense. But Tom Brady, I mean, this is a guy who threw for 501 yards, which is the most, not just in the playoff, but just ever. And he was able to do that, with the defense collapsing like it did. And, that's not on Belichick. That's just on Tom Brady. And, he also didn't have a lot of his offensive weapons that he's used to having. Like some of the guys were injured at the time, and he was still able to really help carry that offense. And even some of the guys that didn't even get a lot of reps, they looked really good out there. And that's because Tom Brady was making a great throw after a great throw until the fourth quarter with a couple of minutes left. And, the Eagles defense didn't end up getting a hold of him. But it's just those sorts of games where you just have to sit back and you just have to admire how great somebody truly is. And you have to respect that.
And part of it too, obviously, yeah, you get Tom Brady, just he was kind of made for that moment. um but it is hard to separate him from Belichick, because you kind of think about all the preparation that kind of went into that, from you know his first start, on. And, it is interesting, when you just see his development through the years and, what he's able to do. And now he's obviously taken to Tampa Bay. And
Right.
obviously this was a fantastic, I mean, everyone built it up, and it really, this, it really lived up to the hype. Just to see Tom Brady, and it was such a tight game. So I was
It
happy to
was.
see it, and I don't usually like watching Patriots games. I have to admit. So
It's okay. It's okay. You're definitely not the first person to tell me that. So
yeah.
you're totally okay. Yeah. I was just thinking, you talk about Belichick and Brady and how you try to separate both of them. It kind of reminds me a little bit of Tim Duncan and Greg Popovich, with the San Antonio Spurs.
Great comp
Would,
there. Yeah.
if the San Antonio Spurs, obviously they had this great dynasty and they were able to go to the playoffs for 22 years straight, which is just unbelievable.
Mm-hmm.
And they were able to get 5 championships out of it. But it makes you think, would Greg Popovich be looked at as this iconic coach if Tim Duncan and Manu Ginobili and Tony Parker and even Kawhi,
Mm-hmm.
if any of those pieces weren't there, how would that change his legacy? I think that's something that you also have to consider too.
That's a great comp because the Spurs are definitely not a team that a franchise that when you talk about best teams of all time, like the Bulls, you don't really hear a
Right.
lot about the Spurs, but really that is more, obviously not more, but it is very impressive with how the different teams that he did it with. And so it really comes down to obviously preparation, and the coaches are huge. Obviously I'm a Bears fan, and I can't remember when the last time we've had a good coach. I mean, we've got Mark Trestman on the
Yep.
roster, and currently Matt Nagy. So coaching does matter. I mean, obviously you have to have the players,
Definitely.
but the coaching is so important.
Oh, absolutely. And I think that sometimes, of course, players play and players have to execute, but especially in football, if you don't have a good game plan, everybody's going to be confused. So you have to have some sort of a direction in which you want to go in, not just offensively, but obviously defensively too. And, when the breakdowns happen, that's when you look at the coaching staff and you look at the coordinators, the offensive coordinators and the defensive coordinators, and you're thinking, if players look very confused out there and if they're just standing still or they don't really know what the heck they're doing, then the most of the blame goes on the coaching staff, really. So it does play a major impact on the game. And obviously it can play a big impact on the season too. I mean, you look at Nick Sirianni and just the youth of head coaching that he has. This is his first season being a head coach with the Eagles. He's made some really bad play calls. And, he's made some questionable decisions, and not everything has been Jalen Hurts' fault. But you kind of have to look at it from the perspective as, yes, the players have to execute and they have to make the right plays, but also the coaching staff has to put the team in the best position to win.
Absolutely. And I heard a story this week about, I bring up Mark Trestman from the Bears, how he was trying to be the positive rah-rah guy during practice.
Right.
But a couple of the former players were talking about how during practice they would start to kind of dog it in practice and not, do the reps properly. And he would, toward the end, his last year, he would not, hold them accountable. He would just, not do extra reps and just, say, we'll finish it. And then at the end, he was telling players, oh, great practice, great practice. So he was not, he wanted to be positive, and obviously everyone wants to be positive, but, as the head coach, you definitely have to be the one to hold people accountable. And obviously, Belichick, like, he does that, obviously part of that aura now, it's just kind of implicit, yes, Belichick, but it's interesting now how obviously Tom Brady has taken that, and I mean, he's always done that as well on the field, but now he's taking it to Tampa Bay and like holding people accountable. And I think that's important, that leadership aspect.
I also feel like at the same time, for him, getting away from Bill Belichick's shadow was a main reason why he wanted to go, not just to Tampa Bay, but he wanted to get out of New England, because a lot of people, that was really the criticism, that Bill Belichick was his coach and that he was a part of a great coaching staff and he had a great team. And so he wanted to prove other people wrong and let them know that he can still play. And at 42 years old, he can still be one of the best quarterbacks in the league. And I think that that was a really bold move from him. And I don't really look at it the same way as some other people do. I know I was talking to somebody the other day and they were making the comparison about what LeBron James did when he was in Cleveland and then he went to Miami. This is different because, you know, Tom Brady, he won 6 rings with them.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, it's a little bit different after you win 6 rings with a team and then you decide to leave. Like, you know, you can't really bash a player for that, or you can't have any sort of criticism because they were able to do that. So
yeah, he'd kind of, you know, I don't know, you know, if you say he'd done what he could in New England, you know, and I do like that. Yeah, I mean, he is kind of, you know, leaving, and it was interesting. Didn't the fans did cheer for him as he was coming out?
Yeah, they did. And then as soon as he got the ball, as soon as the Patriots, you know, got the 3 and out, everybody started booing him after that.
Right.
And even Chris Collinsworth made a comment about that tonight, and it kind of cracked me up. And he was talking about the booing chants and how the New England Patriots fans were reacting and how it could help maybe their offense and, you know, try to help them explode a little bit more and maybe have them come out on top. It didn't work, obviously, because, you know, they weren't able to get the win tonight, but it played a factor. It definitely did play a factor, and the fans, they showed up.
They did. And really, you know, kind of looking at this season, and the Patriots do seem, I mean, obviously you kind of trust Belichick, but they do seem like they're starting to get there. I mean, that the defense can be there. Obviously there's a few pieces, you know, maybe coming back next year, but, you know, with Mac Jones development, kind of overall, I mean, do you kind of have a positive outlook kind of going forward for the Patriots?
Yeah, I would say so. I think that obviously this year, with the way that the Buffalo Bills are playing and where they're at when it comes to their franchise, it's really hard to say that, that the Patriots are going to be a team that's going to be at the top of the division. But I do feel like they're in a situation where they have to stay relevant, but they also have to continue building pieces. And I think that they can continue to do that. And they can pose a threat to teams. You know, they can definitely upset a team and maybe make it into a wild card spot for the playoffs, either this year or even next year as well. But I think that it's going to take them a little bit more time for them to develop and figure out where they are as far as what's going to happen in the future of their franchise.
Right. You know, and obviously you want to see those positive steps, and it's nice to kind of see, obviously, with Mac Jones and everything. And yeah, I definitely, this has been fantastic. I definitely appreciate you taking your time. And so where can everyone find you? Obviously at Jason Joseph 810 on Twitter. Where else can they find you?
So actually so you can also follow me on Instagram too. That is also at IamJasonJO as well. I also do Snapchat as well at JJDog1098. I also I co-host the 10th Inning podcast at Rowan Radio, and I'm going to be on tomorrow with Paul Stanker Jr. and Karaguno, and we're going to be talking a little bit more about the wild card races and how everything finished up with the MLB season. And then I'm also on Planet Philly, which is a Philly sports podcast with Nick Earnshaw. That's on Fridays as well. And you can listen to it on Spotify, and you can also listen to it on Podbean as well. So, I'm all over, and definitely feel free to follow me. And I love talking about sports. Sports is my life.
Absolutely. Well, thanks again. And yes, follow all those things. I'll do some links when I post it on Twitter, and definitely appreciate everything. Thanks again, Jason.
Thank you so much for having me on here. Always great to talk about sports.